Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. From last time, I believe we are finished with that slide, number 4, which is giving us a snapshot summary of the American general values that represent the foundation for this society. And as we could see, there are things in common that Islamically we can share. There are certain values that are common between Islam and the American value system, which can be seen as right here: religion, religiosity, property and charity, the sacredness of property and the importance of charity, the issue of freedoms, the issue of success. It is an Islamic value. So basically, where we differ is on the issue of extreme individualism, self-worship, that the human is the center of the universe, not God. So there are certain values that we disagree with. Secularism, for example, is not an Islamic value, and it is not consistent with Islamic values. Islam is about supporting multi-religious communities living together, but it does not support the principle that the state has no role in religion, but it prevents the state from imposing a religion on people who don't believe in that religion. So the Quran teaches us that let the people of the Injil judge by the Injil. Likewise, let them judge by the Torah. How do they ask you for judgment when they do have the Torah in Surah Al-Ma'idah? So Allah gives what you could call some degree of autonomy in religious affairs, in social and other laws that stem from religious traditions other than Islam. Islam allows their followers to follow their own tradition and to judge by their own book. Okay? But what is going on of conflict now is that the seculars, and by the way, the word I am a secular, it doesn't have any meaning. Philosophically, historically, religiously, it doesn't have any meaning. If secularism means that the government does not support a religion against another, the government does not stop against a religion, the government does not promote religion, then there are rooms for looking at how to apply this in reality. But for an individual to say, I'm a secular, it would mean that he separates between himself, between his politics and his faith. And in the most ardent secular societies, people don't do that. In France, don't do that. In America, they don't separate their own religious beliefs. We knew that Reagan was a very faithful person, right? Albeit he was an artist and actor. What's his name? The one before him, Carter, was a church priest. So there is no real separation here between an individual belief and his or her political choices. There is no such a thing. So for an individual to say, I am a secular, it doesn't just make any sense. Because a secular could be a state that separates the power of the state from influencing any religion, positively or negatively. That is understood. It's a political system. But for a person to say, I'm a secular, I'd laugh at it. Because there is no such a thing, unless the person wants to say, I believe in secularism. I believe in the secular system. But I am a secular person, it doesn't make any sense. Because we all are informing our choices and values and judgments by the value system in which we believe. So whether the person is a Christian or a Jewish or a Muslim or a Buddhist, everyone taints their political choices and judgment with their own values. So one can never say, no, I don't. In reality, it doesn't happen. This separation between my individual faith and my individual politics is practically unreal. Although there are people who claim that it is real and we just don't understand. So the Western socio-religious approach to the issue of religion and value is as follows, and I picked and summarized the main headings for this. Number one, faith is personal. And I'm disturbed by this kind. It could be done some other time, please. So, in the socio-religious approach to values and religion, the American system works in this way. It says faith is personal. So if you start to talk faith in public with any group around the water coolant or anything else, they tell you don't shove your religion over others. Keep your religion for yourself. In the real society, as far as laws and regulations are concerned, God has a place, but only in the church, the synagogue, or the mosque, not in public life. The maximum space Allah gets in public life is to swear on a religious book when you take the oath of office. That's the maximum. Beyond that, maybe they will allow a clergy person to say a couple of words. But this is much less than symbolism even allows. But that's the extent of it. So in public life, there is no religion. Which means religion has nothing to do with law. Religion has nothing to do with education. Religion, and when we say religion, we're talking also about the religious values. Because a religion and its values are inseparable. And by the way, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, they join hands in hands and shoulder by shoulder when it comes to ethics and principles and manners and principles when it comes to values. We all like decency and don't like what is indecent or what is unacceptable. So we believe in honesty, we believe that lying is bad, we believe that cheating is bad. So when it comes to manners and ethics, we almost agree on everything as far as the religious beliefs and textbooks are. But it doesn't mean that as Muslims, we all follow all the values. There are Muslims who lie. There are Muslims who abuse. There are Muslims who are not as decent as they should. But we're not talking about judging people, we're talking about comparing the values. Okay. So, as a result, that faith is a matter of personal belief, it comes also that the state doesn't have a faith. The state in the secular system doesn't have a faith. The government doesn't have a faith. And they consider this wall of separation between the religion and the religious values and the state decisions and policy as something very good for the society. But let us examine this. Is it really very good or is it very bad? So, on religious grounds, America used to prohibit usury, right? Then they made it lawful. America used to believe that alcohol and all those what they call spirits, they are bad, and it was prohibited. 1934 comes, and the lobby for the wine industry tell them, you are stupid as a government. We are selling and making tons of money. It is like illicit drugs now. People are selling it and making tons of money, but there are no taxes on it because it's not legal. Right? So they convince the government, say, at least let us sell it in the open. You regulate it as much as you can. So the maximum they did is they raised the age of drinking and who can buy, who cannot, who can consume at home, who can consume in a public place, and you cannot drive while drunk, so on and so forth. They said, and we collect the money. So money ruled over faith. Okay? Likewise, abortion was completely prohibited. Now, abortion on demand is the law. So again, something against their own religion, not our religion. Our religion was not there to consider anyway. So all what I'm saying is secularism starts to encroach on religion and religious values and creeps on what makes a society specific and valuable. They now encroach on it. Until now, we understand that homosexuality is not only unlawful, it is not only lawful, it is the law. And they have been conferred certain rights legally. So you cannot discriminate against someone whose behavior is condoned by the law. Do you understand how the secular regime is wiping the values from religion? If you want to live with us, then we the seculars are going to enforce that you accept what we decide, irrespective of your faith. And when it becomes the law, you will have to abide. So now, secularism has become a competitive against religious values and religions as a whole. So when you tell your child, for example, homosexuality is bad. No, it is the law. Don't go with these guys because they smoke weeds, marijuana. He says, no, in California it's legal. If I go to California, I will do it. And guess what? Some kids go to California to do it. They take a vacation and that's where they go. Now it's debated in Maryland and other places to come close by here. So what I'm saying is the conflict is very close to happen between secular legalization of what is religiously abomination is coming. It's not going to last forever unless the religious voices are completely silenced. And that's exactly what the secular forces are trying to do, to silence all religious authorities from talking about or addressing issues that the society decided that the law is against it, or to stand against things that the society says it's okay. So if they make something illegal, they want you not only to live it, but believe it, practice it. And if they make something legal, they want you to practice it, whether you believe in it or not. So here is a real conflict between the secular system, which claims to be non-religious. But let me define a thread that we need to pay attention to. The Quran calls disbelief kufr. The Quran calls it deen. Of course, some of us may be confused by this. How could kufr be a deen? Because in Islam, deen is a way of life. It's a belief system that leads to a way of life. Okay? So the mushrikeen, they became kuffar by the value that they had in their head and how they believed in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they believed in Allah, but the way they practiced it was idol worshipping. Christians believe in Allah, but the way they practice is they say Allah is Jesus. So it is not just a practice system, it is a belief system that leads to a practice system that leads to a total way of life. So if every religion leads to a way of life based on certain belief system, secularism and even atheism is also a religion, because it's a belief system that leads to a certain value system that leads to a certain way of life. So when the Quran says, "Lakum dinukum waliya din," you have your religion and I have mine, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is telling Prophet Muhammad to tell the kafirin this: you have your religion and I have my religion. Lakum dinukum waliya din. So the kufr is defined as a deen because even though it is a belief system or lack thereof, it leads to a certain way of life. Unfortunately, people who don't believe in religion, they are more consistent with what their deen is than those who believe in religions. What do I mean by this? I mean that people who are atheists, for example, they don't believe in the existence of God. They are consistent in that their way of life reflects that. People who say, no, we believe in God, we believe in the hereafter, we believe in prophets, but violate all of what they believe in, they are worse in real life than an atheist who is consistent, because consistency produces predictability. You know what to expect of them in terms of thinking, logic, laws, so on and so forth. But a Muslim who says, I am a Muslim, but I'm not a hijabi Muslim. So what kind of Muslim is this? Do you have a hijabi Muslim and a non-hijabi Muslim and a compliant Muslim and a Muslim who doesn't want to submit? Islam is submission. You either submit or you don't. So what happened is secular groups are more consistent with their secularism because it gives them grounds in life, and they are taking grounds from the religious communities. I hope that point is clear. So faith is personal, no religion in public life, okay? And this life is full of trial and error. So how do the Western society deal with this? They deal with this in the most practical way. You have a crisis, we have insurance, we can cover you. You're sick, we have insurance, we can cover you. You are below the poverty line, we have a social security system and we'll keep you alive, but you will never be rich. But we have a system. So they treated the illness and the trials of life in the most pragmatic way, and by doing this, they also stole the religious alternatives. So instead of people forming co-ops for housing, co-ops for insurance, co-ops for healthcare and stuff like this, they regulated everything in a way that it takes the whole issue out of religious institutions. We know that education in this country was part and parcel of the churches. And when synagogues started to come, it was the same. By the time Muslims started to come, if you want to have it, then it is private. Because everybody else, if they want to have it, it's private. So public education was a necessary for the state to raise generation after generation of run-of-the-mill typical Americans who would want to live and enjoy the freedoms, the liberties, and so on and so forth, and the equal protection under the law. If you want those privileges, then you come through our system of education. And if you don't like it, that's okay, but you can go have your private education or homeschool. Even homeschooling was fought in the beginning. Charter schools were fought in the beginning. And people who fought it, they were afraid exclusively that religious institutions would benefit from those funds that go to the charter schools. So they regulated it in a way that takes this away from religious communities. Why am I going through this comparison and contrast? Because it is important for us as Muslims to understand the context in which we live. We live in this society and we have to deal with its systems, and we have to be able to define where we agree to work together and where we disagree with the system, so that we can augment and protect our children from being swept in the public philosophy and the ideas of secularism and the separation of, or the exclusion of God from public life. They picked from religion the concept of justice, because justice permeates all religions. All religions are about justice. It's about protection of life. It's about protection of family. It's about protection of this and this and this. Even though the laws here does not necessarily always work to protect family, but very well in protecting individuals. It's very well done when it comes to protecting individuals, especially the weak and the underprivileged. Okay? at least protecting them from dying as a result of any mistreatment or abuse or anything like this. So they picked the justice issue from religion, but then they centered all the system around man. Man is the center of the Western value. It's about man. It's about man is freedom, man is liberty, man is choices, man is individual will. It's all about this. Until now, we have developed in the West individuals who are stronger than the society. Individuals who are strong and stronger than the society. If you have seen Zuckerberg, the guy who invented Facebook, sitting in front of 20 or 18 senators in the committee investigating what happened with Facebook and the data, he is stronger than 18 of them. He was running the show. He was throwing jokes. He was so confident that there was no accountability. Very frivolous questions and issues were raised, but the interest of the millions whose data have been stolen with the knowledge of Facebook, because they allowed their system to be that open and they made money out of the company that stole the data, they still came to the Congress as they invited them, and they were sitting and talking as if they were in charge and leading the charge against the Congress and against the American people. Very few points were made to tackle the real issue, and they were made reluctantly. You could watch that hearing one more time and see if that's true or not in your views. In mine, it is very true. Part of the man-centered value system is the fact that you realize that all the laws are meant to protect individual interest. So where is the family? Doesn't matter. Where is the society? It doesn't really matter. So we see statistics coming from the government, statistics coming from the government about teenage pregnancy, about drugs and gangs and what it does. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't matter. With all the hoopla that was made around smoking cigarette and how much damage it causes up until death, individual freedom to sell and manufacture and individual freedom to buy were given priority over the interests of the whole society. So cigarettes are still killing our people, especially those at young age. All what they did is they prohibited advertisement for very young age. The camel symbol that was very attractive for young kids and stuff like this, they banned it. But other than that, they acknowledged, after pressure, the 7 big tobacco companies, they acknowledged that tobacco is addicted, and the addiction is meant and deliberately injected into the tobacco. And they agreed to put on the tobacco that it causes cancer and even death. And they are still on the top of the number of issues that's legal and leads to death. Which society will do this to its own citizens? Am I harsh on people or the law or the legislators? No, I am not. I believe that the value system, despite the fact, so the reason I am dissecting all of this is because it falls into the value system and how it plays out in society. And on the other hand, they don't want a Muslim nation to live by its own values. I don't know in what way does this hurt them. In what way? So any popular movement in any Islamic country that wants to live by Islam and Islamic values, they are fought teeth and nails. It's just so difficult to fathom. So in any way, so this man-centered value system also doesn't care about divine truth. Divine truth is part of your faith. And divine truth is what you believe to be divine truth. So, as if divine truth doesn't really matter. So, in everything that we do, we ask for more research, more examination, more experimentation to see what works and what doesn't. But when it comes to values, we don't even allow the test. We don't even allow a religious say over what we're doing. So this is total separation from God. So as a result of these values, the belief system and the legal system is about absolute freedom, except in one case. You don't have the freedom to violate the law. And you have about 545 people legislating every single day, and you imagine the amount of legislations coming out of the Congress. That's on the federal level. Likewise, 50 legislatures nationwide are legislating for the state. And hundreds upon hundreds of councils are legislating for the city and the town and the county. So how many piles of laws are we living under? And you cannot violate any of them. And the sword of the law is on your back every second of your life. But if you want to say, this is haram, you say, no, your daughter could do whatever she wants. You have no say, right? Especially if she complains. Even if she was a child by legal definition. So a child who complains, who is 15, 16, 17, which is a child by definition, against his parents, they are given protection. And if the parent wants to enforce his own rules in his own home, on his own daughter or son for that matter, he can't. So that's why, unfortunately, this society has long said goodbye to the family, goodbye to the family values, goodbye to religion, goodbye to God. If you want to believe in God and stick with what you call religious values, take your values and your God and entertain this in your church, in your mosque, and that's it. But the society will have its own laws that will be imposed on everybody, no matter how consistent or inconsistent they are with your faith. And by the way, this is one reason that makes religious people easily riled, whether they are young Muslims who don't like the system or young Christians who believe there's something wrong with this system. All sides are being pushed away from the mainstream system because the system does not talk to their conscience. The system is talking what it wants us to hear. That's it. So the individual can have absolute freedom, but so long as you do not violate the laws of the land. Other than that, you are free to do anything, young or old. So because the system has set its own rules, the system set also its own rewards and punishments. So for the system, paradise and hell are here, not in the hereafter. This is something that makes everybody's life here, if they want to live by their own religious values, then they have to struggle with the system. You have to struggle with the system to try to balance between your faith and the reality in which you live. So now, if, for example, a Christian or a Muslim who does not believe in the mixing of boys and girls in school at free will, if they don't want their son or daughter to participate in a dancing party in the school. They become the exception and they are required to apply for exemption. If your child, son or daughter, reaches the age of puberty, which is in middle school most probably, then the school will propose and make part of the curriculum the study of sexual issues and stuff like this. If you want your child to be exempted, you have to appeal and apply to get this exemption. So you are the exception. Center materialistic attitudes. Okay, so the central materialistic attitudes are full of things that we have to pay attention to. Number one, it bases everything on cost-benefit analysis. And we gave several examples. The wine issue, the abortion issue, homosexuality, all of this is counted on the cost-benefit analysis in contrast to the context of freedom. So anything that runs against individualism and individual freedoms, then the system will support it. Okay? So cost-benefit analysis produces certain attitudes. Number one, you follow the system so long as there is somebody watching over your back. So if the policeman is not on your tail, you can cross a red light or pass a stop sign. So you are afraid not even of the law, you are not respecting the law, you are afraid of the punishment when you want to violate the law. So if you could beat the system, you get ahead. If you follow the system, stay in line, and when your turn comes, you will get something. If your turn doesn't come, sorry, we ran out of it. That also led to the issue of selfishness, that, as they say in Arabic, me, even if flood comes after me, أنا وبعد الطوفان. I don't care. I don't care what happens next. You see this in the traffic, you see this in everything else. Anyway, so for young children to understand how to live in that system, those issues are nurtured in them at young age. What matters is what you want. If you like it, if it makes you feel happy, go ahead and do it. This is not exactly the home value, right? But it takes the headache out of the classroom. So the teacher would let any child do anything so long as they do not disturb the classroom. Even if you don't want to learn, I'm not going to force you. You will fail, but that's all what it is. And the system doesn't give the teacher any power to do anything but to fail a child who doesn't want to comply. So it's all about academics. And when it comes to manners, then there are discipline that they follow that does not treat the issue, it deals with the symptoms much more than anything else. What was brought very good in the schools lately was the counselor office. That there is a counselor office, but unfortunately their role, instead of helping kids understand more life skills and helping them mature and grow and take responsibility, instead that counselor office has been focused on preemptive prosecution of child misbehavior. So if they define a child as a troublemaker, their focus is not on reforming his behavior or her behavior. Their focus would be on how to get this child out of the group, out of the school. So if the child is misbehaving in the classroom, instead of getting treatment, he gets expelled. So The teacher doesn't want headache. Also, the counselor doesn't want headache, right? And both practice defensive teaching and defensive counseling. What is defensive teaching and defensive counseling? It's like defensive medicine. You go to the doctor, and the doctor knows exactly what you have, and he can treat it. But the insurance is telling him, before you give him medicine, you have to take an X-ray, for example. And before you take an MRI, the patient must go through the normal X-ray first. Why? Because it's cheaper. So the doctor who is afraid of being sued or kicked out of the insurance practice, they practice what is called defensive medicine, which is they use more precautions to protect themselves than to serve their patients. Likewise, defensive teaching is the same way. Defensive counseling is the same way. Everybody wants to get rid of a problem and to run away from being a low subject. So the system is structuring pain and extra cost on everybody. So kids at young age are taught to be selfish because they cannot live a life of magnanimity and be safe. And it reached a point of silliness where, for example, because of the spread of abuse, parents abusing children and people abusing their positions and practices and everything else, it reached a point when a parent is less likely to be trusted to authorize his son or daughter for certain procedures. So they run much more tests to make sure that the test is really required before they agree with the parent request. So the system, the whole system, is a defensive system against the laws that the system put in place. So which is easier? I'm a counselor in a school, and a troubled student comes by my office. Which is cheaper? To give him warning and send him to the principal, and the principal will get some authority and get their parents and chastise them for how come you're leaving your child this and this and this, and then the second or third meeting the child is kicked out of the school? Or is this easier, or is it easier for me to have 10, 15, 20 sessions for the child to recognize what's wrong with them and help them acknowledge what the responsibilities are towards themselves and others? Which is less pain? And the longer I stay with a child as a counselor, the more vulnerable I become. Parents could sue me for anything. The child could cause me trouble for anything. So the sooner I push somebody away, the safer I become in my position. That is something that the society needs to review. So selfishness is an issue, and what comes to next is that ethics and principles matter least and matter last. So I know that what I'm doing is not going to serve any purpose, but I'm going to do it because the law requires me to do it. How could the law require me to do it when it is not in the best interest of my client? The law said so, period. And most of the people who are legislating laws are not practitioners of the application of these law areas. They are not. So it's not doctors regulating the practice of medicine. It is any legislator, any elected person, whether he is a farmer or a lawyer or anything else. Anybody could legislate by the power of election. So that also produces the worst laws you could come across. So it encourages people to put their conscience on the side and follow the law. The law said so. then it also teaches people manipulation. Because if I have to face the family and face the principal and face the child and face the classroom and face my supervisor and face the law at the end of all of this, I have to learn manipulation. I have to control more information, right? Even if it gets to lying, I have to violate my conscience because I don't want to expose myself to this. So for the parent, I will tell one story and it will work. I will use it with other parents. And if it doesn't work, I will learn some other trick and use it with the next parent. So people who are in public service in general or serve the public in any capacity, all what they care about is to navigate away from the light of the law. And that teaches deep manipulation. I'm sorry that all of what I'm saying seems to be dark, right? But I am digging the value system in which we live and the system that is built on those value issues, and how does this compare to what Islam teaches us of value. This is the point. This is the point. Because I hear and see, as you do hear and see, societies in the East, in Muslim nations, say the secular system is perfect. We can live with that. But they don't know what they are talking about. We live here and we need to be at the forefront of helping, number one, our society to do the needed corrections. We need to collaborate with other faith communities to get together to help refix what went wrong with the system. So this is the point I'm trying to get across. Then we have the love of control and power. From young age, kids are taught that leadership is itself a goal. Parents believe the same thing. Why? Because those who are following are the weakest in the pack. So everybody wants his or her child to be the leader in everything, right? So the emphasis on leadership is too huge to miss for a child growing up. So children grow up fighting over leadership positions, fighting over putting titles with themselves and their names on their resumes, right? Fighting to show off that they are the best. And this love for power and control leads to arrogance and boastfulness instead of humility and service. See, Brother Yusuf is saying in his comment, which is true, despite all of this, this is the best society, but he forgot to say this is the best system there is, right? In reality. But in theory, Islam is a better system because what made this society better than any Muslim society that is in existence in the world is because Muslims have left Islam centuries ago. So if I live in a blind community and I only have one eye, I am a king. Yes, it's the best in existence as reality. But is there any system that used to be better and used to be looked up to by the West as a whole? It was Islam. It was Islam. And it was in reality Muslims were better than all others when they were in power. They used much more discretion and much more reserved control and abuse than others. I'm not saying Muslims, when they ruled, they were perfect. No. But they were not in a position of massive abuse of the masses, as is the situation now in the West. Am I critical of the West? as much as I am critical of Muslims who have let this model be the best model for everybody to look up to. It is because of our failure. And I'm critical of Muslims for that. Okay. Anyone wants to add or yes?
I have a suggestion that
Yeah, if we finish this series, which will take us to other topics that are related to the same value system and stuff, your questions will shape what comes next. So I see my role is not on imposing, but trying to expose the issues I come across and share that with everybody. And then you have a question, somebody else has another question, we'll definitely address those. So your question is in place, but we need to first lay the theoretical background. Okay, any other question? You mean which society doesn't have these problems? When we see the Ibn Khaldun, one of the major Muslim historians and sociologists, he says that the dominant civilization will always be dominant in its culture. It will try to establish hegemony over other cultures, and the lower ranking cultures and civilizations will always look up to the dominant civilization and culture. I addressed this issue one time in my Friday khutbah, and I said, we are very hurt as Muslims for the fact that the West looks down at Muslims. And I said, guess why? Guess why do people in the West look down at Muslims? And my reasoning, some people said, was very interesting. I said, because when they look up, they don't see us. The only way they see us if they look down, because that's where we are. And that's a reality. This is, you cannot earn more than the effort you put.
We did not show a better example.
You know, do you look for a cockroach? That's a bad example. But did you look for a rabbit or rat that is flying? Right? Where do you look to those? Do you look to as a flying snake? Snakes creep on the floor, on the ground, right? So things that are down, you look down at it, right? But you look up to a plane. You look up to a flying rocket, right? You look up to a leader, right? You look up to some achievers because you want to be like them. So only when we start to become achievers, leaders, and take people up to a higher level of values, people, if they want to see us, they will look up because we are up. But so long as we are still down, they have no choice but to look down at us. It is on us to be up. Nobody will give us a lift but Allah. Inshallah. If you connect to the one who is the highest and the greatest, you will be up very quickly. But if our models are below that, then we must be way below our models.